Hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's edition of Self Publishing Insiders. I'm Jim Azevedo. I lead corporate communications and marketing for Draft Digital. And with me, my guest today, I'm honored, is Desiree Duffy. So, if you don't know Desiree, Desiree is the founder of Black Chateau, which is a marketing and public relations agency. She's also the founder of Books That Make You, a Webby Award winning multimedia brand that promotes books and authors through its website, its podcast, and its radio show. And if that wasn't enough to keep her busy, she's also the founder of the Bookfest Adventure, a biannual and free online event that is uniting book lovers worldwide. The next event rather, is right around the corner. It's the weekend of the 26th and the 27th. Desiree, welcome. Thanks for being here.
Hi, Jim. Well, thanks for having me. I'm excited to talk to you.
Well, it's exciting to have you. You have your hands quite full, and we've got a lot to talk about, as you know, today.
Yeah.
It's going to be fun. We've been talking a lot about events lately on this show because events are just so important. But before we get into the meat of the conversation, I wanted to learn about more about you because you have an interesting background. You've been involved in marketing and PR and digital marketing for several years, and you're based in Southern California, right?
Yes and no.
Yes and
So,
no.
yes and no. That's a complicated story, but I'll give you the short version.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
lived in Southern California, Los Angeles area for 20 plus years. And then
Yep.
when lockdown happened, our son-in-law decided to get his PhD from OU. So, my husband and I and the business, rather temporarily speaking, are
Sure.
in Norman, Oklahoma. So that's
All
where
right.
I'm broadcasting from. But we go back to Southern California and we're very integrated into a lot of the events like the LA Times Festival of Books. And
Mhm.
we do different gifting suites with our authors during award seasons and things like that.
Did you know that Draft Digital is headquartered in Oklahoma?
Oh my. See, we're neighbors.
Yeah, we are. Well, kind of, because we're kind of the same way. We're like everybody's everywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Think that was one of the cool things. We'd been a virtual company even prior to the pandemic. And then once
Yep.
that happened, though, I think it became more just mainstream. And we really realized that this was the way of the world. So we like to say that we're located all over the world, that we're global, because we do. We have team members who are in different parts of the United States, still in Southern
Yep. Same
California,
here.
Washington, and then we even have team members who are in other parts of the world as well. So it's really kind of cool.
And it works. It works.
Mhm.
Now, earlier in your career, you did marketing and publicity for several industries. So what kind of made books your home?
While I was vice president of a very boutique digital marketing agency in
Mhm.
Calabasas, California, I realized as I was trying to promote my own book, as I had
Yeah.
all this experience, it's like, I got this, right? I got this. And I was like,
Yeah.
this industry is different. There's different things. Reviews work differently here. Being at events, doing a book signing, it's all so different. And that was the inspiration. That's where I decided to take a lot of the digital marketing disciplines that I had already been using and a lot of the experience I've garnered over the years too, way back in my early career, for example, I was in radio. So even that kind of filters through kind of like this long thread because we're doing the book fest and events and things like that.
Mhm.
But at any rate, I saw that there was a need. There was other folks out there who wanted to get their books noticed. Authors needed some marketing and PR solutions.
Yep.
So it was essentially taking a lot of what I knew from, professionally over the years and creating systems and processes that work for authors today.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I have a similar background because I came from the tech industry and spent about 20 years ish in the tech industry before pivoting over to the publishing industry. And the things that you learn, and we were talking about this backstage, backstage, but we were talking about this before we went live. It's that earlier in your career, once you get, 10, 20, even 30 years into it, you look back and you're like, wow, it's kind of neat how those breadcrumbs kind of ended up delivering me to the position where I am today. It's neat. And a lot of these industries, you may not think about it, but there are a lot of parallels that we can use in our current industry, in the publishing industry. And I love this industry compared to the tech industry. It's much more warmer and fuzzier, I must say. All right, so let's get into some of this nitty gritty. Let's talk about the Bookfest Adventure. Yeah, what is it? Who is it for? When does it occur? And
It's coming up.
why did you decide to add one more thing onto your plate?
I didn't decide. That was the universe
You just
deciding
okay,
for us.
okay.
Again, it goes back to early 2020, when we were getting ready as Black Chateau to have many of our authors join us in our booth at the LA Times Festival of Books, because we're always there. The LA Times Festival of Books, for those who
And
aren't familiar.
yeah, oh, I'm sorry. I'm just gonna say that is an awesome book fest. I've only done it once, but I'm like, oh my God, like what a great book fest.
Yeah. I mean, they claim to be the biggest in the United States, and I believe them because every year we've
Believable.
been there, it's huge. It's just an amazing event. There's authors that are speaking. We always have a booth there, and we invite our authors to do in-booth signings, and we create
Hmm.
an activation around it. We do PR and social media, etc. And of course,
Hmm.
that wasn't happening. It was, March, February, I think, 2020, when we realized that the LA Times Festival of Books, at that point, they just said it was going to be delayed. We didn't know in those early
No
days. We
idea.
had
Yeah.
no idea how long it was going to last. And a lot of our authors were just very disappointed because we've been planning this and they were excited to be there. And then we said, and I think you might appreciate this, Jim, coming from the tech world. I said to Brian, our developer, I said, you know what? Do they have any kind of, I knew there was like GoToWebinar. Even then, Zoom
Yeah.
was still very much in its infancy. Like, is there an out of the box type thing where we could do an online book festival?
Hmm.
Maybe use Facebook. We've done Facebook events and things before, but it was still not quite where we
I
wanted it
can
to be.
relate. Yes.
And then, true to form, Brian, our web developer, said, "Nah, but I can build that website for you,
Oh,
custom built,
really? I didn't know
just
that.
how you want it." Yeah, yeah.
Wow.
And we just,
Go
it was
Brian.
such a weird time because it gave folks a little bit of extra time because we were all, we weren't sitting in traffic anymore, and we had that extra time. My husband, Dave, who now is with Black Chateau, at the time he was with a film and content distribution company. And with theaters going into lockdown too, you can imagine what was going on with him. He's like, hey, you know what? I'm not commuting and I got a few extra hours every day. Y'all need some help. And
Nice.
so we created the book fest, the website, everything in 6 weeks' time. It was amazing.
Whoa, really?
It wasn't perfect, but it was okay because nobody expected you to be perfect in those
That's
early
true.
days. Everybody was like, let's Zoom, let's have an online thing, let's do meetings and whatever we need to do it virtually. And that's
Yeah.
that's when the first one, that's how it began.
That's so interesting. I'm just gonna bring up this comment from our own Lexi who says the pandemic was such a curveball, it made everyone have to adapt. These live shows started during the pandemic for that reason. That's right. I didn't know that
Yep.
until after I joined the Draft to Digital team with the self-publishing insiders. I remember in the early days of the pandemic, and even once we were a year or maybe even 2 years on, I've heard so many people in interviews saying like, "Oh my gosh, the pandemic gave me a chance to reset and I take some time and really think where I wanted to go." And I remember like, "What? Not me," because everything got so much busier because people couldn't leave their houses, and so they were downloading books and downloading ebooks. So Smashwords got busier, Drafted Digital got busier. We were doing more online talks and just figuring it out with the rest of the world at the same time.
Yeah. One of the nice things that came out of that is just giving writers, everybody that had been writing that book, slogging away, never found the time to sit and finish it. They had the time to sit and finish it. So yeah, the publishing, especially with self-published and indie authors, it really kind of gave them that oomph they needed.
Can you talk a little bit more about the Bookfest Adventure and Bookfest and how it's organized, how often it happens, and how much it costs?
Sure. The fun part is it is free to attend. It was free that first time, and we've kept it free. And it's not even, again, it's not like an event that you go to, you need a link and you need a passcode and you have to get in there. We actually created it so that we use YouTube, so it streams. It's a live stream, it's a
It's
streaming
yeah.
event. It's like a broadcast. It's like a watch party is probably a little bit more in line with what it is.
So
And it
simple.
streams so simple. Yeah.
Yeah.
But sometimes it's complicated because we get people all the time. How do I register? Where do I go? And it's like, it's right there on
Yes.
the website.
That's because that's what we've come to expect over the years here. Like, it's gotta be complicated. I need to crash before, 5 minutes before I'm supposed to join. I have to
Yep.
download a piece of software, like, all that stuff.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. So people can watch right on the website, right on the homepage of thebookfest.com. We do invite people to become bookfesters to sign up because we do send out the full schedule and news and information. We also do a virtual gift bag at the end of each bookfest, and
Oh, do
that's
you?
filled with for yeah, yeah. Very similar to how if somebody goes to a conference or a
Yeah.
book festival, you get your swag bag. It's very much like that. And a lot of our supporters, our corporate bellwethers, in other words, our sponsors,
Yeah.
donate items. So it could be a free download or membership discounts, things of that nature.
That's really
Yeah,
cool. So
yeah.
when does
So
the
yeah,
next one take place?
we are happening October 26th and 27th. And day one is always for the reader, with day two being for the writer. And that's because, and this is kind of an interesting thing, Jim. When we did the
Okay.
first one, we did it with the idea of our authors want to be there and they want to be talking to readers. Again, it was, a little
Absolutely.
bit, taking off of the LA Times Festival of Books, which is more reader centric than like a writers conference. Those are
Mhm.
two kind of similar but very different things because of the audiences. Writers conferences are for other writers. You want to talk about
Yeah.
craft of writing and how to use products like draft to digital and about your
Mhm.
branding as an author, et cetera, et cetera. So the first one we did was just for the readers. And it was interesting because so many writers came to me and said, I want to talk about world building. Can I talk about character development? I want to help authors with their marketing, with their
Yeah.
advertising. And so we quickly realized that we had two things going on. And it's not unusual in our world. I think,
It's not. It's not.
yeah, I mean, it's like the concentric circle type thing is has a lot of overlay because if you read books and you love books, there's a really good chance you want to write books or you're at least playing with that idea. So having day one for the readers, and it's really for everyone, but it's geared a little bit more toward people talking about the topics in their books and
Yeah.
their love of books. It's more inspiring. And then we do the live author chats at the end of day one. And that's exactly what it sounds like. It's live. So if something can go wrong, it usually does, but
Of
that's part
course.
of the fun.
That's part
Uh,
that's part of the fun. That's what puts the adventure in the Bookfest Adventure.
Yeah. So it's like a variety show is the best way to describe it. Authors will do readings from their book. They might read some flash fiction. Since we're close to Halloween, we've invited authors to, be festive, dress up if you want to. I know we have a couple of authors, or one in particular, who's going to make a cocktail for us inspired by her books. So different authors doing different things and it's fast paced. Everybody gets 10 minutes to take the stage. So it's kind of like an open mic type of thing, but with
Mhm.
authors doing all sorts of fun stuff. And then on day two, which is Sunday, October 27th, that's when we lean over to the writers. So it's more akin to a writers conference, that type of programming. And
Okay.
that's when you and Mark Coker are
That's
joining
right.
us, talking about your journey with draft to digital, smash words, and all of that um,
Yeah,
as
tune in
well.
everybody. If you I mean, tune in for the entire event, especially if there's gonna be that interaction between authors and readers on day 1. That's if you're not there, if you're an author, tune in to see how some of these readers are interacting with the authors, and you're right, Desiree, there are a ton of events now that are reader-centric, but that bring in the authors in too, and for those of you who may be newer to the indie publishing community, the indie authors, there's no one has a better opportunity to interact with readers than indie authors do. So take advantage of all of those opportunities as they present themselves. And if you haven't done it before, tune in, watch how some of these other authors who have already published several times, who have already been down this path, watch how they interact with some of these readers so that you can get some ideas for your next event. And if anyone's interested to learn the whole history behind Smashwords and how Mark Hooker, the founder of Smashwords, and I met, and then what it was like, trying to build up Smashwords over the years, and then being acquired by Drafted Digital. It's a fun conversation. I had a great time. We pre-recorded it, and Desiree was our interviewer. It was just a lot of fun. So if you're interested in that story, tune in. It's free.
It
What
is.
other speakers do you have on the schedule, Desiree?
So on day one, we are so excited to have S.A. Cosby join us. He's
Ooh.
going to talk about his kind of dark noir fiction, along with Jennifer Ann Gordon. We have Kelly Armstrong with us as well, talking about ripping through history, historical fiction. Um, and then we have
Oh, I like the mix.
Kelly and Kelly. Yeah, yeah. That's the other thing too. We do like to kind of mix it up. We have some historical fiction in there. It's spooky season, so anything dark and scary, yeah, well, we like to lean there. Slumberkins. Are you familiar with that brand by chance?
I've heard of it, and I can almost see the logo in my mind's eye, but refresh my memory.
So it's children's books. It's a
Mhm.
little bit closer to consumer goods, though. They're books, but they're partnered with a plushie. There's like a
Hmm.
Yeti and a yak. And it is all about being in touch with one's feelings and helping your child be in touch with their feelings and cope with things on that level. Well, Kelly and Callie are joining us, and they are going to be doing a conversation about their new adult book. So that's really exciting. They're going to be with
Oh,
us
interesting.
again. That's on day one, and the moderator for that is Dr. Elfie Braylon Noble. So we're excited to have them. We're also talking with several. We're doing a panel discussion with several authors about historical fiction being the good old days, because sometimes we look at the past with those rose-colored glasses. So we're
Oh,
going to be
oh,
talking about the setting and how that influences even our world today. We have travel book authors, travel books, whether it's a travel
yeah.
memoir or, that's something that's been around forever too.
Thank
So
goodness for
we
travel books, I must say. They have helped me more than once.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, even going back to, medieval times, people were traveling and writing about their adventures. So that whole idea, I think, and it's still active today, and just talking about all the places that you will go. You held up your Dr. Seuss book earlier.
I
So
did.
it's yeah,
There it is.
there's that one. Love Dr. Seuss, right? Absolutely love
Right.
Dr. Seuss. And then we have, oh my goodness, I almost forgot. We have Annie Corzin. She used to be on Seinfeld, the TV show Seinfeld. She is a TikTok
Wow.
sensation. And she's going to be talking with Deborah Vankin, who is from the LA Times. Now, Annie is just one of those people who's vivacious. She dances and she's a self proclaimed, she's 85 years old. She's obviously got a book out, but she also shows that you can defy what people think are the expectations or the norm. Because I don't know about you, but I know so many
Love it.
authors who are like, I'm too old for TikTok. I
Oh,
can't do social media. And she shows that you can do it at any age.
yeah, that's the oldest excuse in the world.
Mhm. Yeah.
Aging and ageism. As I say, as I'm like one of the oldest guys in the company now.
That sneaks up on us fast, doesn't it?
Oh my god, yeah, it sure does. It sure does. I think you've already I was gonna ask the next question, which is, why should authors, attend events like Bookfest? But, I mean, you've given so many reasons already, these fantastic people who've been around the block a few times, and how to engage with others. So, is there anything else that you would like to mention about the Bookfest adventure before we sort of move on?
Just Be sure to check it out. Scratch the surface. We have over 55 amazing speakers who are joining us. And I'll hit a one or two notes as well for day two, which again is leaning
Please. Yeah.
towards the writers. We have
Okay.
Lucas Strunk, who is going to be talking. He's known as Local Script Man if you're on YouTube and social media. And he's going to talk about adapting the Enneagram in your character development. We have a conversation. I'm doing a conversation about editorial type book reviews and book reviews in general. So check it out. There's a lot of stuff going on. Author Brandon McNulty, he's the author of Bad Parts and Entry Wounds. He's going to be joining us in conversation as well. And do check out the programming page of the Bookfest website to see everything. And again, like you said, it's free, so no
It's
reason
free.
not to join us.
No reason. Are these sessions, are they going to be accessible later if someone's like, say, if they're traveling or something like that? Really?
Yeah, yeah.
That's
I
cool.
believe very strongly in curated content. In other words, rather than just making a flash in the pan, everything is curated on YouTube. We use the Books That Make You website. Books That Make You has a YouTube channel, and then the Bookfest is one of the channels inside of that, I guess is the right way to say it. So all of the videos after the live stream, because it's one big long stream,
Actually,
they are for
should I put up that site or should I put up the YouTube site for books that make you?
Either or. If you have the Books That Make You, yeah, that's it. And then within that, you can see all of the past book fests. And you'll be able, if you
Okay.
want to subscribe there as well, if people are on YouTube, that's basically the native, that's where we're streaming from is YouTube, and then it goes onto our website. So all of that curated content, everything is edited down so people can go through then and watch each individual session if they like. And the nice thing too for the authors who are participating with us, if they're doing a conversation, for example, the one that you're doing with Mark, you'd be able to then grab that YouTube link. And if you wanted to embed it in your own website, you may. We make everything just free. Take it, share it, use it, disperse it however you'd like.
Oh, that's perfect. That's really cool. And quick comment from Beth. Jim, I'm putting your session on my calendar so I don't miss it. Right on, Beth. Hope to see you there. Thank you for that. And can I just say how awesome it is that in the indie community, information is so accessible. There are resources out there. We were talking about this. I was at the Novelist Inc. Conference in Florida. Prayers for Florida and what they're going through right now. And then again at the Georgia Romance Writers just the other week, and it came up a couple of times where if you're trying to find information from traditional publishers, if information's out there, like how to find an agent and how to pitch your book to publishers. But sometimes some of that information is held on tight. Whereas in the indie community, it's like, here you go, like here's the path, follow these steps, talk to this person, talk to that person, watch this YouTube video, go to this conference. And by the way, so much of this information is free out there. So just that's just amazing. I'm gonna bring up another comment here from Layla Rose. Hi, Layla. Thanks for your comment. She says it feels like there's never been a time where readers have more access to authors and vice versa. Absolutely, positively. And take advantage of that, you guys. Even if it feels a little uncomfortable at first, um, embrace it because these your readers, they're loving your stories, but a lot of times for the authors that really, really truly break out, they're breaking out because of you, the writer, the author. They fall in love with your brand, your personality, the quirky things you might share on your email newsletters. What do you think, Desiree?
Absolutely. I think having a personal brand as an author gives you more opportunities than ever before. We didn't have this 20 years ago. I mean, sure, authors had a certain persona and brand about them, but they weren't connecting with their readers in the same way because of digital media, because of social media, because of being able to connect like this.
Yeah,
I think it just gives folks more opportunity.
yeah, I agree. I'm gonna bring up another comment here from Guillaume. Hey, Guillaume. uh, Guillaume visits us, every week. We appreciate you being here. I'm gonna use you, Guillaume. We're gonna use your comment to segue into the next question that I have for Desiree. But Guillaume asks, how do you help authors sell their books, ebooks? I would like to sell a huge amount of my fiction as this is my full-time occupation. Wouldn't we all? So I'm going to use that, and we're going to kind of segue into talking about marketing and publicity because that has been kind of your thing here for, well, for the majority of your career, right, Desiree? So
Yeah.
can we talk about some trends, just some trends in marketing, like event marketing? Since we're talking about events, why are events so important for today's authors?
I think events are on the verge and it's already happening, I think. It's like an event horizon, so to speak, because as we get more and more connected virtually, we also feel very disconnected. And there's stuff out there like artificial intelligence, and there's a lot going on with, is a robot writing my book or is a robot artificial intelligence? Is that allowed? How much can it help you with? So, just breaking through that a little bit, I think that going back to the point you were making earlier, being able to connect with your readers at events, and I do consider what we're doing now, a podcast is a type of event too, as well as the book fest, and then doing those in real life events, as well as hybrid events. There's a lot of in real life events that'll also do something hybrid. But I believe that gives the author that ability to connect to their readers. So thinking in advance, even because in some cases you might want to book a space or be
Yeah.
part of a book festival months, if not even many years, or not years, but many months in advance. For example, I mentioned earlier, do the LA Times Festival of Books. They already sent out
Hmm.
for April, for next year, April, for us to secure our space there. So you don't want to wait until 2 weeks before and your book's launching, and then you start planning when you're going to be doing some of these events. And I also ask
Yeah.
authors to break out of that common notion of I must do a book signing. I want to go into the local store. I'm going to walk in there with my stack of books, and they're going to welcome me with open arms because here I am, an author.
Yeah.
Hello, bookstore. Don't you want me? Here's the dirty little secret. Maybe it's not so much of a secret, but I've talked to a lot of bookstore owners, and they actually invite the authors to be there because they feel a certain obligation to the community. They get hit up all the time for authors wanting to do that in-store book signing.
Hmm.
And besides some of the logistical challenges that especially some indie authors might face with getting their books there, making sure that they can order those books, do a consignment or whatever. But just being aware of the fact that they often, in other words, the bookstores often take a bit of a hit on it. They might have to staff extra people during your event. They might even need to bring in security, secure extra parking. They're going to put your information in their newsletter. They're going to market it to their patrons. They're going to tell people to come by and buy your book. So they're doing a lot for you. So I ask authors to always think about what you can do for them. And don't be
Absolutely.
the author that walks into the bookstore as your book is launching and start bragging about how it's a number one bestseller on Amazon. Because guess what you're doing? You're telling that local bookstore that their competition,
Yep.
which is Amazon, because Amazon's a retailer, folks.
Hmm.
So kind of be cognizant of what it is that they want and their expectations. Show them what you can do for them.
Right.
Show them you've got that email marketing list, that you've got that fan base established. And this
Yeah.
ties back into all of those things that you need to do as an author to build up a following. Let them know that you're going to run some Facebook and Instagram ads inviting people to come. Let them know that you're going to invite your friends and family. And don't be surprised or disappointed because you can have that vision. You're going to sit at the desk signing your books. People are going to be lined up around the corner. Well, I got some, shocking news for some is that the average number of books sold at a book signing is 7. And chances are your friends and family are going to be the core audience of
Yeah.
who's going to be there. Other authors, and this is another thing too. So make sure you're connecting and networking with other authors. you make your case even stronger to do an in-store event like that. If you bring in several authors, then the bookstore is looking at it like, oh, okay, we got this Jim guy and he's writing hard sci-fi, but then he's also got a couple of his friends and they're writing science fiction, fantasy, this, that. So you kind of stay within the genre to some degree, but
Yeah.
then you're also spreading out the possibility of making that an event. And then all the authors too. Very much like when authors will share and swap email lists and do cross promotions that way,
Yeah.
you're actually building each other up. So those are a few ideas when it comes to kind of doing that traditional book signing, and think too a little bit outside the box. It doesn't necessarily have to be at your local bookstore. It can be the coffee shop, or maybe it's the local farmers market. Maybe you want to bring your book to the events that there aren't a lot of other authors.
Right.
One of the things about that LA Times Festival of Books, it's huge, but you are one author
Yeah.
among literally thousands, and you're all doing the same thing. So, in actuality, being at one of those events can be really great and it's going to get you publicity and it's going to feel really good. But there's a good chance you might sell more books at your local farmers market.
Yeah. Absolutely. Or at your local library. Here's a comment from
Libraries.
our own Mark Leslie Lefebvre, who says most libraries are booking events at least 2 to 4 months in advance, and then sometimes longer. Yeah, and
Yeah.
they're interested in local authors. They want to know about local authors, but you have to understand how the libraries work. So if you can come to the librarians and speak their language, let them know that your book is in the Overdrive catalog or the Baker and Taylor catalog or within Hoopla, then the librarians will say, "Oh, okay, perfect," because that's how we order our books. But as Mark is saying, it takes a little bit longer, and then every library has you know usually pretty strict guidelines when it comes to curation. They need to look at that book and make sure that it's appropriate for their readers. Thanks, Mark. Appreciate that comment. Now, Desiree, you talked also about, or you mentioned to me before we went live about integrated marketing strategies. What do you mean by integrated marketing strategies? And can you talk about that a little bit more? Because I think that's a valid strategy.
So you're a marketing guy, I know. So I think you know what integrated marketing means. But for those
Yeah.
who might be unfamiliar with the term, it's a little bit of an old school term, I feel, at this point. Integrated marketing was very much very buzzy around the early 2000s. And I think that's when I really started thinking about how everything works together because Web
Mm,
2.0 at the time, that was the thing, it's Web 2.0. And what we really meant is people were starting to pull information to them rather than have it pushed upon them. Think about how 20 plus years ago, if you were watching television, you might have had three channels to choose from. And even going way, way back, you didn't even have the remote to change the channel. Those
hmm.
commercials, those ads were just being pushed on you. Radio pushing ads on you. And those,
Constantly.
platforms are still around today. But when we started to realize that social media, back then it wasn't even Facebook, it was MySpace and Friendster. Folks started realizing that people consuming and pulling content toward them was the wave of the future. And that also meant that the marketing strategies and PR strategies, advertising strategies should be integrated because they all should work together. Up until that
Mm,
time, it wasn't unusual to have an advertising agency have very little idea of what the brand was all about. Branding really came up into its own at that point too, because folks realized that a strong brand identity is going to play very well on social media. And again,
yeah.
now you have people that are coming to you because they want to be there, not because they feel they've had an advertisement kind of shoved in their face. So integrated marketing as it relates then to authors is just that. And that's the foundation of the author network with Black Chateau. It was all designed so that we're doing all of these different services to promote or launch a book that are integrated. They all work together. In other words, getting authors advanced reviews,
Hmm.
previews, That is an integrated strategy because even for us and different publicists and marketing firms use different platforms. One of the ones that we happen to use is NetGalley. And one of the cool things about NetGalley is I can see if somebody on there is a journalist. So
Hmm.
being able to get your book reviewed and then to have the publicist follow up with them and see if they want to interview that author, it all works together much more. It's much more integrated than it ever was in the past. Even think of how when you're on social media,
Yeah.
and I know a lot of us are on social media more as the casual user. Authors who have their own pages, their own business
Or as
account.
the lurker.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. But it's an advertising platform too. Trust me. Facebook,
Hmm.
Meta, they're not there just for they're not giving stuff away for free. They're there because they have a platform.
Yeah.
So being able to advertise there and having the advertisements show up in somebody's feed that's more catered to their interests. That's the idea. So all
Hmm.
of these things in essence, every aspect of an author's book marketing and publicity and advertising should and can all work together. Because once you start leveraging all of these things, you're really building it up and getting the best results.
Okay. Can we focus in on PR for a second? Because you spent a large part of your career on publicity for your clients. How are you thinking about PR these days for authors, and how has that changed in the age when podcasts have really taken off?
It's just opened up a whole new world as well.
Hmm.
Again, we have this digital medium. We can do a show just like this. I can see your doggo, or is that your kitty cat in the background?
That's my
Right?
dog. That's
Your dog.
that's Zaya. That's Zaya the destroyer. She's asleep right now, so she's not destroying anything, but she's a good
The
pooch.
the idea of doing this, right? It wasn't around. Like
No.
even 10-ish years ago, you could kind of do it. We were doing webinars and things. So there was some ability to do this. But the whole idea that podcasts, especially the ones in the bookish world, can really zero in on topics. You have niche
Yeah.
topics, and that can be so powerful for authors. Uh, Sometimes I'll tell authors, they're like, well, I want to go wide. Everybody loves my book. I want to be on the
Yep.
big shows. But really, some of those very niche and focused podcasts, because of the audiences that are going to absolutely love
Yep.
their cookbook about Italian cooking, right? That tends to be a little bit more niche, is going to be more powerful and beneficial. Having 500 followers of a podcast that are the core demographic can be a lot better for an author than having 5,000 or even
That makes
5
sense.
million.
Yeah.
Yeah,
'Cause
yeah.
the whole key to, reaching your authors is going to where your readers are, or reaching your readers is going to where they are. And if there's a niche podcast, then absolutely go for that podcast.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Plus authors have the ability to do narrative podcasts. That's something that I think is really fun too. They can take their book, their story, and adapt it into a narrative format. I think really when it comes to true crime too, a lot of that is coming together because you can have a true crime book, right? Or
Mhm.
articles about true crime. But then some of those true crime podcasts are just amazing and riveting.
What about, traditional media and PR for traditional media? Are you helping your clients with that? And does it work for indie authors, like, placing a radio interview or a newspaper interview or a magazine interview? And then how do you sort of get them ready for that interview?
Yeah, I can speak from our point of view. The way we
Mhm.
segment our lists, our PR lists,
Yeah.
we do it by beat. I don't
Sure.
do it by the type of media. So, in other words, and we have categories, media lists that are everything from archaeology to zoology. So, depending
Yep.
upon the author and the topic of their book and the things that they're going to talk about, I'll be able to send their press release and their pitch materials to those different lists. And then we have
That
publicists that come in and do it. But the point there is there are some PR firms that are like, if you want to be pitched to the high level folks, you automatically have to pay higher. And I'm not saying we don't offer more advantageous tiers for those more aggressive campaigns.
Yep.
But the way I look at it is radio, podcast, articles, online articles or Q&A type interviews, newspapers, magazines, etc. All of the media are separated that way because it's really about hitting the topics. And to answer your question about how do the authors get ready for these interviews, I
Yep.
think it boils back down to that branding, like we were talking about. That's foundational. And I don't mean branding in that fluffy, esoteric way where it just feels like, oh, it needs to be pretty and make the logo 10%
Hmm.
bigger. And I don't mean like that. I mean, really think about what your talking points are. Even fiction authors, it's harder for fiction authors because they're like, oh, I want to talk about dragons in my fantasy world. And that can be a little bit of a disconnect to some folks unless you're really hardcore into
Yeah.
fantasy. But I feel like a lot of authors have something to say. It's easy for the nonfiction authors if their book is about, you know, how to lose 10 pounds in the next 10 weeks, then, the title of the book is practically the media pitch. With fiction authors, we dig a little bit deeper and find out what are some of the themes? What are they writing about? Was there something that inspired them to write this book? Is it a coming of age story? What kind of knowledge
Right.
do you have to share? But then it's a matter of working with the author, getting those talking points down. That way the author feels comfortable talking about their talking points when they're being interviewed, practicing a few times, making sure they have a nice pithy answer and they know how to go into detail when they need to. And also making sure that the media host, the producer, has their materials. And I think this is one of the things that some folks who don't really know PR might not really understand the value or why that's important.
It's an
But
art.
being able to provide, it is an art. Thank you for that. Because they want to be able to get the point of what this interview is really
Yeah.
fast. And if the author wants to go down a deep rabbit hole in their pitch, it's probably not going to do them any favors.
Yeah.
And it hurts sometimes. I've had to tell authors, an author, they did not read my book when I did this interview. And I was like, sorry, a lot of them aren't going to read your book. I wish I could make them all read your book.
Yeah.
But
Well,
if we hit the points, if we give them the points and make it so that they could virtually rip and read for the laziest host in the world to
yeah.
just read the questions and then we got
You
a good
have to you
interview.
have to assume that they're lazy. Not that they're lazy, but you have to assume that they're lazy, and then you have to give them their story on a silver platter. You have to give them the bullet points you want covered. You have to give them the artwork. You have to give them the angle. They can choose to take that angle or not. But all if you can lay out all that stuff, that's really important. And I want to underscore something that you said right in the beginning when you started talking about PR and publicity and how you break your target lists into different beats. That is so important for everybody. I just want everybody to grasp that because you can't just come up with a list of 100 media targets and shotgun everybody. You really need to know who covers what. And then after you figure out, okay, this reporter at this newspaper covers my topic, this person's perfect. Go a step further, read a bunch of their stories, read their leads to those stories, and literally go through with a pencil or red marker and dissect each of those stories. Try to figure out what gets that reporter excited. Is it the local angle? Like, what is it that gets them the most excited? And that will usually bubble up in a lead paragraph. So go that extra mile if you want that coverage.
Yeah,
My two
great
cents.
advice. Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
gosh, every week I'm like, oh, I hope we have enough to talk about. And then every week it's like, bang, we're right at time. Um, Let's see. I wanted to quickly ask you. We've covered a lot. One thing I want to ask you before we leave, though, has to do with these pay to play opportunities that seem to be coming up more and more and more, where authors may be contacted by, I don't know, some kind of an entity that says, "Hey, we'll get you on the such and such podcast, and it's only going to cost you, insert ridiculous fee here." Is there ever a time when an author should look to paying a fee for being on a podcast or placing a news story or any other kind of publicity opportunity?
My answer on this is a little bit nuanced because as
Okay.
somebody who produces a podcast and does a show, you're doing it right now. You realize that there's costs involved. There's editing costs, and for example, with our own Books That Make You show and with the Bookfest, server
Yeah.
space, hosting, editing, the team, it all costs money. So
Yeah.
there are some shows where if they're asking for maybe a cup of coffee tip, I like stuff like that, where you don't
Hmm.
have to feel like you're paying outright, some kind of a donation. Or if they're like, hey, can you help out with some of our engineering costs? And then those costs are relatively low. I don't mind because I understand, and I understand that they're bringing value to our clients, to our authors. But what I'm seeing more and more, and this is a broader issue too, because there's a lot of scammers out there in
Hmm.
general, besides just the podcasters. But it seems like the higher up you raise your head, the more popular you become as an author, as a brand, then you become a target. When we send out our press releases, every time at this point, there are shows out there charging thousands of dollars, promising the world, and
I get
they're big,
contacted by them.
yeah, and they want you to pay $1,500 to be on this 10-minute radio. Sometimes they'll have a
Yeah.
pseudo celebrity attached to it. It looks good and it feels good. And I think the best way to detect and have a barometer there is if they start asking you for money, ask them to talk to your PR representative or your agent or go through the proper media channels, because if they are somebody who's trying to circumvent the publicist who's on the bottom of the press releases or is listed on your website, or
Yep.
even if you just have a contact form and you're doing your own PR, but you're asking them to kind of go through channels. If they're trying to go around that, that's usually a red flag, because they know that if they go through the traditional PR channels, that the professional is probably going to sniff out what they're up to.
Yeah. I kind of agree with John's assessment here. That sounds like vanity podcasting, very much like vanity publishing. Yeah.
Yep,
And
he nailed it.
just yeah, and I'm fortunate that my background is in PR, but most legit journalists, they're not going to go through some kind of a production company to find your news story, because that's the journalist's job. If they're digging for some news and they think you have an interesting story, they'll find you legitimately. So appreciate that comment, John. So we're coming to the end. I just want to remind everybody about the upcoming Bookfest event, the weekend of October 26th and 27th. It is a free event. Do yourselves a favor and just go to thebookfest.com and check out the schedule for both days. Again, Saturday is geared toward readers. Sunday is geared toward authors, but I can guarantee you, just I was looking through the schedule, you'll be able to learn tidbits of information, or lots of information rather, on both days. If you want to learn more about what Desiree does and her companies, her multiple companies, the Black Chateau and Books That Make You and the Bookfest, go to YouTube, her YouTube channel. That's youtube.com/C, that's the letter C, /books that make you. There is a ton of resources there, a ton of interviews, lots of really good educational content there. Um, should I bring up the Black Chateau website as well? Why
Sure,
not?
if you want to.
Let's bring it up. Because with this company, if you're interested, if you need a publicist, if you need some help or some advice on how to market your books out there, go to blackchateauenterprises.com, and Desiree and her team can help you out. Well, once again, we have come to the end. It's always so sad every week. We have these interviews and then they're over in a flash. So I want to thank our viewers out there for hanging out with us once again. If you enjoyed this conversation with Desiree, can you please do us a favor and like the episode, share it with your author friends, comment, subscribe to the channel, because that helps us attract more guests like Desiree to share their knowledge and expertise with you every week. Be sure to bookmark d2dlive.com, because at d2dlive.com, you'll be able to see what the next guest, what the next topic is going to be in subsequent weeks. And finally, if you are an aspiring author, or maybe you are a seasoned author who's been through the traditional publishing rounds, but you're investigating self-publishing for the first time, why not sign up for a free account by going to draft2digital.com. Once again, everybody, thank you so much for joining us on this adventure this week. I'm going to leave you with a quick commercial spot for D2D Print. D2D Print is our print-on-demand service that's really taking off because we make it so easy to create your print-on-demand books now. And I'm stalling because I can't find the video clip. There it is. But Desiree, thanks again for your time this week. We really appreciate you being here, and I hope that we get to continue this conversation. I'm looking forward to the Bookfest. I will be there.
Absolutely. Jim, thank you so much for having me on the show. I appreciate it. I appreciate you and Mark. And because I know you have indie authors, there is a special Bookfest issue of Indie Author Magazine as well. And you have an article in there. So I just wanted to give you a little shout out for that.
I do have an article in there. Thank you for bringing that up. It's about how the power center in this industry is shifting away from the largest traditional publishers and into the hands of writers, where it belongs, right?
Mhm. Right on.
Thank you, everybody, for joining. Thank you, viewers, especially some of you who keep coming back week after week. So we appreciate you all. We appreciate your time. We'll see you here next week. Bye, everybody.
Ciao.
Ebooks are great, but there's just something about having your words in print. Something you can hold in your hands, put on a shelf, sign for a reader. That's why we created D2D Print, a print-on-demand service that was built for you. We have free, beautiful templates to give your book a pro look, and we can even convert your ebook cover into a full wraparound cover for print. So many options for you and your books. And you can get started right now at draftedigital.com.